For those of you who follow me on X and who've watched my show, I have been passionately adamant that the 5+11 model is the way to go. And here are the reasons why. Number one, the SEC and Big Ten want to do a non-conference scheduling agreement amongst themselves if they go to the automatic qualifier model, which means you get 4. If they go to 4 automatic qualifiers for the SEC, 4 for the Big Ten, 2 for the ACC, 2 for the Big 12, 1 for the G5, and then 3 at-larges. If they do that, then it wouldn't a non-conference loss would not hurt you as bad because you can still get in the playoff if you're a top 4 team in your conference in the SEC or Big Ten, so they can play each other more, which helps them bring in more TV revenue. I think that would be bad for the Big 12 and ACC because you don't want the SEC and Big Ten making any more money than they already are. Because, yes, they're already way ahead of you. They could widen that gap even more. That's one of my arguments against. Now, one of the arguments for that is, hey, the Big 12 can do their own play-in games to help, but they would not be able to do that non-conference scheduling agreement with the SEC or Big Ten. So they wouldn't be able to catch up there. And they might even lose games against SEC opponents already on their schedule, or Big Ten opponents for that matter, which would hurt individual teams as well in the Big 12 or ACC. So, it allows the SEC and Big Ten to widen the money gap, basically. That was one reason I was against it. And I still think that's a fair argument. The second reason I was against it, and probably the one I really planted my flag on, was the integrity of competition. You don't want to hand teams a spot in a playoff strictly based on the conference they play in. You need to earn it on the field. That's the word I think Brett Yormark and others have used. Earn it on the field. And I was adamant about that. It's the spirit of competition. It flies in the face of everything sports stands for if you automatically grant team spot in a playoff based on conference, right? More on that in a minute. If you're the Big 12 and ACC, you don't want to codify or make it official that your conference is only half as good as the other two, and it can hurt you in recruiting. That one, not as big a deal to me. I mean, it's kind of already been done based on public perception and the money gap, and also championships, right? Let's face it, the Big Ten and SEC have won the most championships, so they've kind of already separated themselves in that regard. So that one's probably not as big a deal, but I still, as a leader of an organization, you don't want to say out loud, publicly admit that you only deserve half the spots, especially when you're all 4 considered autonomy 4 or power 4 leagues. That was something I said was bad as well. And then the last point as to why I thought the 5-11 model was the way to go, and arguments against the 4-4-2-2-1 model, was you're capping your access for future playoff. What if one year the Big 12 could get 3 or 4 teams in the playoff? Well, you can't because you've already seeded this 2 automatic qualifiers, and you can't get more than that, right? So you might have 2 or 3 deserving teams that don't get in. Or, 1 or 2, I should say. 1 or 2 deserving teams that don't get in the playoff because you've already capped yourself. And, I don't know. It's my understanding there may be a look-in clause in that playoff model. I know at one time Brett Yormark was asking for a look-in clause around 27 or 28 once they go to this new playoff format. Not sure if that's still a thing or not. I think it needs to be. Regardless of what model you go to, I think you need that look-in clause included to where if a conference punches above or below their weight class, they get a chance to alter the model a little bit, especially if you do the 4-4-2-2-1 model, or 4-4-2-2-1-3, I should say. And also, going into this new era, if the House settlement passes and, the schools have this spending cap on the rev share side, could that possibly put the Big 12 and the ACC on a little bit more even playing field financially with the Big 10 and SEC? Obviously, the TV revenue gap still exists, but would it help them from the NIL perspective and help them compete better? And since we're not into that era yet, I think you might be hurting yourself and future opportunities to get in the playoff. That's been one of my arguments. And I still think that's a fair argument. But then I see this FPI thing come out, and it reminds me of the disrespect that you often see towards the Big 12. Not all the time, but sometimes. It reminds me of the subconscious bias, and maybe it's even sometimes not even subconscious, that a lot have, for the SEC over the Big 12 and ACC. I mean, look what happened a couple years ago when the undefeated Florida State got in. I don't want to harp on that too much, but I think that's an example of a time when the SEC got favoritism over the ACC, right? And then, so it's hard not to admit that exists. You know, Joel Klatt had a great rant about this on his show. I recommend you go watch it. Again, Numbskull News, probably my favorite YouTuber or creator or media person who's talked about this. He's really the one that got me second guessing myself on this. He was extremely passionate about it. And Numbskull, if you guys know Numbskull, the guy's very direct. I love Numbskull. He's so entertaining. And by gosh, he's going to tell you the truth and how he feels. And if it hurts your feelings, suck it up, Buttercup. And it's fun to watch. But Numbskull really brought me around to looking at this from another perspective. And here I'm going to give you the bullet points as to why I think I may be changing my mind about this and why I might be coming around on this 4-4-2-2-1-3 automatic qualifier model. Number one, and this was something that was brought up in an article over at The Athletic by Doctorman. His last name's Doctorman. I think it's Brian. Is it Brian Doctorman, maybe? Anyway, it is, I want to make sure I get the author's name right. Scott Doctorman. Scott Doctorman did a great article over in The Athletic on this. All right. This is the point he made. If you do this 5-11 model, schools may decide, you know what, it's easier for us to get an automatic bid. It's easier for us to get an at-large bid if we play a little bit weaker schedule, which means teams might start playing less Power 4 games. Now, the Big Ten is trying to get the SEC to play 9 conference games. They're pushing for that, right? SEC coaches are like, maybe we don't need to do that. That gives us or puts us at risk for another loss. Well, if you go to 5-11, I can almost guarantee you the SEC is not going to play 9 conference games because they don't want to risk losing another game, which might hurt their chances of getting an at-large berth in the playoff. And heck, we've heard, even with under the 12-team model, we've heard Neil Brown, when he was at West Virginia, talk about how they are playing too many Power 4 teams in the non-conference. As a fan, I think that sucks. I want to play good teams. It's fun. I get excited about playing Penn State. I get excited about playing Maryland and Pitt and Virginia Tech. I'm excited about Alabama being on the schedule for 2026 and 2027, assuming it doesn't get canceled. Those games excite me as a fan. I don't want to lose those games off the schedule. And if you go to an automatic qualifier model, if you're a West Virginia and you lose that game to Alabama, which let's be honest, they probably will, if you lose that game, it doesn't hurt your chances of getting in the playoff because you can still get your automatic qualifier spot in the Big 12. So teams will be more likely to play Power 4 opponents. I think that's a positive of the automatic qualifier model. Second bullet point. And this kind of is an argument to go at my previous point, if you remember, where I planted my flag on the competitive integrity, right? For the 5-11. I said you would be earning it on the field. Joel Klatt made a great point. How are you earning it on the field if your fate's being decided by people sitting in a boardroom? And he's got a point. And also, if they go to the automatic qualifier model, most of these conferences will be doing play-in games. At least the Power 4 conferences will do play-in games at the end of the season to determine who gets in the playoff. So you still are earning it on the field. And that's something I really hadn't thought about. Hadn't fully thought through. I got so passionate and emotional about the thing, saying, by gosh, you can't give teams automatic spots. I think I wasn't seeing the forest for the trees here, maybe. You're still earning it on the field because you're earning it by beating teams in your conference. For example, in the Big 12, let's say you reward your regular season Big 12 champion by automatically putting them in the playoff, right? Potentially. Then you could have your second place team play your fifth place team, and your third place team play your fourth place team, and the winner of those two games play for that final spot. Or you could just do a full all out, regular number one team plays number 4 team, and number 2 team plays number 3 team. The two winners get in the playoff. You're still earning it on the field, even though it's called an AQ for your conference, but you still have to earn the spot within your conference. So you're still earning it on the field. So I think maybe I was a little short-sighted on that. Maybe I'm wrong. Look, I'm still struggling with some of this stuff. I haven't fully embraced either one of these arguments, but I'm telling you, I'm inching closer and closer to this automatic qualifier model. Let's go to point number 3 as to why I'm coming around on this model. When you look at the data, the SEC is likely to get 5, 6, maybe even 7 teams in the playoff most years with a 5-11 model. How is that good for the Big 12 or the Big 10 or the ACC if the SEC is getting 7 or 8 of the spots? Because they're going, especially if Greg Sankey is able to get this strength of schedule metric that he's pushing for to become number one priority. Because we see, based on this FPI model, everybody considers the SEC the toughest conference already before the games are even played, which boosts their strength of schedule. If you start the season out ranked, your strength of schedule numbers are automatically higher when you beat a team that's ranked. Right? I think that's how it works. Correct me if I'm wrong. So if the SEC's, the 5+11 model actually benefits the SEC. That's why I'm like others. I'm a little surprised that Brett Yormark has fully embraced it, and why the ACC has fully embraced it. Why are they? Maybe there's a political game going on here behind the scenes. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. But if the SEC is getting 6 or 7 of the spots, how is that helping the Big 12? I don't get that. All right. I mentioned the propaganda by the SEC. That can impact the committee and how they view the SEC. Even though the SEC is going to be good, we know they'll be good, but maybe they won't be quite as good as the committee perceives them to be, or as the media perceives them to be, right? And as some people accuse ESPN of corruption because they control the college football playoff and they're going to push the committee to make certain decisions. I'm not going to go down that road, but it is possible, I guess. Stormy Cyclone has a good point. He says, how do you tell a recruit you have a chance to P2 to get in the playoffs in the full 4-2-1-3 model? And that's one of the arguments against that model, Cyclone. That's why I'm having trouble. There are valid points on either side of this argument. And that's why I'm getting the point now. I think I'm just kind of going to, I might even be neutral here. I don't know. Outlaw College Football and myself have laughed a lot about. I'm the type. Sometimes I struggle to pick a side in some arguments, man, because I literally understand both viewpoints and can't pick a side. I think he's even teased me about riding the fence. That's literally how I view it, man. I see valid points on both sides of this argument. And here's the last point, and this is why I think I'm leaning more towards the automatic qualifier model now. I've been saying you got to do what's best for college football, and the 5-11 model is best for college football. That's even what Brett Yormark said. Maybe I drank Brett Yormark's Kool-Aid. I don't know. Maybe I'm guilty of that. I try not to do that, but I am human. And going back to what Numbskull News said, was Brett Yormark being sanctimonious? Was he saying he wanted to do what was best for college football just to suck up to Greg Sankey or make himself look good, knowing it's not what's best for the Big 12? Because at the end of the day, who pays his salary? The Big 12. If Greg Sankey is doing what's best for the SEC, and Tony Petitti's doing what's best for the Big 10, and Jim Phillips is supposed to be doing what's best for the ACC, Shouldn't Brett Yormark be looking out for what's best for the Big 12? Now, maybe his Big 12 presidents want the 5-11. Not sure why they would, but maybe they do. I'm sure the coaches do, right? Well, maybe they don't. I don't know what the coaches want, but nonetheless, you get my point. Shouldn't he really be more concerned about what's best for the Big 12 in today's landscape? Even though I want what's best for college football, and like Joel Klatt said, how was the Big 12 only getting one team in most years good for college football? Now, I've made the argument, and passionately the other night on the College Football Mafia show, that we don't know that the Big 12 is only going to get one team in because they haven't played this model yet under the new landscape of college football with revenue sharing. Maybe the Big 12 is better under those circumstances, but here's the problem. The Big 12 now, with so much parity, the teams in the Big 12 are so even as far as resources and culture and things like that. I'm not sure it's going to be really hard for one or two teams to separate themselves above everybody else, in my opinion, in the Big 12. I think you're going to have a different team potentially winning the league every other year. That's exciting and fun to watch as a fan, but it also makes it harder to get multiple teams in the playoff, especially in an at-large model. When it's uneven conferences, you don't get to play it. Some teams are going to benefit from easier schedules than others. So I don't know, man. In the landscape of college sports, where you have such large conferences, nobody's playing in this even schedule. There's not really a fair way to do it for the Big 12 and ACC. When they gave the Big 10 and SEC all that power last year or 2 years ago to decide how the college football playoff was formatted and gave them all the majority of the revenue, that is the big, huge mistake that those two leagues made that they can't take back. You can't take that back. The toothpaste is out of the tube. The genie's out of the bottle, whatever you want to call it. That's done. Now, it doesn't mean you pile onto that more mistakes and give them even more power. And that's another reason I was against the 4-4-2-2-1 model, because I didn't want to give them any more power than they already had. But at the end of the day, should Brett Yormark and the Big 12 swallow their pride, stop worrying about public perception, and just do what's best for your league and vote for this 4-4-2-2-1-3 model? Now, I'm like Numbskull, though. I actually like the 4-4-3-2-1-3 model, or 4-4-3-2-1-2 model. Let me explain what that is. SEC gets 4. Big 10 gets 4. The ACC and Big 12, the top two teams in those leagues, play to see which conference gets 3 bids. And either the ACC or Big 12 will get 3 on any given year based on who wins. And then whoever loses that game only gets 2 in. Something like that. Some type of playing game between the ACC and maybe each conference's top 2 get in. The third place teams in the ACC and Big 12 play for that third slot, whatever. You see my point. Give the ACC and Big 12 a chance to get a third team in every year based on who wins that game. I like that idea. That's proving it on the field as well. Now, that would mean one less at-large bid, though, for either the Big 10 or the SEC probably, and I don't think they're ever going to agree to that. So, I don't know, man. I'm struggling to pick a side here. I was passionately on the 5+11 side until this morning, to be honest with you. This is June 3rd at 7:23 p.m. Eastern Time, and I am gradually changing my opinion.